Two nations, one border, infinite complexity. Canada and the United States share the longest undefended border in the world, stretching over 8,891 kilometers. Yet this geographical proximity has not always translated into harmony. Their relationship is a tapestry woven from threads of war, diplomacy, trade, cultural exchange, and ideological divergence. From the War of 1812 to the renegotiation of NAFTA, from hockey rivalries to NORAD cooperation, the Canada-USA dynamic has evolved into one of the most multifaceted bilateral relationships in modern history. This essay explores the historical roots, political tensions, economic entanglements, cultural interplay, and military alliances that define this enduring partnership. Historical conflicts, from colonial clashes to national identity. The War of 1812 and the birth of Canadian resistance. The War of 1812 was a defining moment in early Canada-USA relations, sparked by American grievances over British maritime policies and support for Indigenous resistance. The war saw American forces attempt to invade British North America. Canadian militias, Indigenous allies, and British troops repelled these invasions, notably at battles like Queenston Heights and Chateauguay. The war ended with the Treaty of Ghent in 1814, restoring pre-war boundaries but leaving a legacy of Canadian nationalism rooted in resistance to American expansionism. Fenian Raids and border insecurity. Between 1866 and 1871, Irish-American militias known as Fenians launched cross-border attacks into Canada, aiming to pressure Britain into granting Irish independence. These raids, though militarily ineffective, exposed vulnerabilities in Canadian defense and accelerated the push toward Confederation in 1867. The Fenian threat also reinforced Canadian fears of American annexation. Territorial disputes and diplomatic settlements. Throughout the 19th century, Canada and the USA clashed over borders, from the Oregon Territory to the Alaska boundary dispute. The 1846 Oregon Treaty and the 1903 Alaska Tribunal helped resolve these tensions, but not without Canadian resentment, particularly toward Britain's perceived favoritism toward American interests. Economic interdependence and trade wars. NAFTA and the rise of continentalism. The 1994 North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, marked a turning point in Canada-USA economic relations. It eliminated most tariffs, encouraged investment, and integrated supply chains across North America. While NAFTA boosted trade, Canada became the USA's largest export market. It also sparked debates over sovereignty, environmental standards, and labor rights. At USMCA and the Trump-era trade tensions. In 2020, NAFTA was replaced by the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. Following intense negotiations under President Donald Trump, Canada faced pressure over dairy quotas, digital services taxes, and auto manufacturing rules. Though the New Deal preserved much of NAFTA's framework, it reflected a shift toward protectionism and tested Canada's diplomatic resilience. Softwood lumber and agricultural disputes. The softwood lumber dispute, ongoing since the 1980s, centers on U.S. claims that Canadian timber is unfairly subsidized. Despite multiple WTO and NAFTA rulings favoring Canada, the USA has repeatedly imposed duties. Similar tensions exist in dairy, poultry, and wheat sectors, where Canada's supply management system clashes with U.S. free market principles. Defense and security. Allies in arms. Divergent philosophies. NORAD and continental defense. Established in 1958, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, symbolizes deep military cooperation. Headquartered in Colorado Springs, NORAD monitors airspace and maritime threats across North America. Canadian and American personnel work side by side, sharing intelligence and operational duties. World Wars and Cold War collaboration. Canada and the USA fought together in both World Wars, strengthening military ties. During the Cold War, they coordinated defense strategies through NATO and NORAD. However, Canada often pursued peacekeeping missions while the USA engaged in unilateral interventions, such as Vietnam and Iraq, highlighting philosophical differences in foreign policy. The Kiska Incident and Friendly Fire. In 1943, during the Aleutian Islands Campaign, Canadian and American troops mistakenly fired on each other in foggy conditions on Kiska Island, resulting in casualties. This tragic episode underscores the risks of joint operations and the importance of clear communication. Cultural interplay, identity, influence, and resistance. Media and pop culture. American media dominates Canadian screens, from Hollywood films to Netflix series. While this fosters shared cultural references, it also raises concerns about Canadian identity. Canada has responded with content quotas, funding for domestic productions, and cultural institutions like the CBC. Hockey rivalries and national pride. Hockey is more than a sport. It's a cultural battleground. Canada and the USA have clashed in Olympic finals, World Juniors, and NHL playoffs. These rivalries, though friendly, reflect deeper national pride and competitive spirit. Music, literature, and artistic exchange. Canadian artists like Drake, The Weeknd, and Margaret Atwood have found success in the USA, while American influences shape Canadian tastes. Yet Canada maintains distinct artistic voices, often exploring themes of multiculturalism, nature, and quiet resilience. Political divergence and diplomatic challenges. Governance models and ideological gaps. Canada's parliamentary democracy contrasts with the USA's presidential system. Canadians tend to favor collectivist policies, universal healthcare, gun control, and climate action, while Americans emphasize individual rights and limited government. These differences shape bilateral negotiations and public perceptions. Foreign policy and global engagement. Canada often aligns with multilateral institutions like the UN and emphasizes diplomacy and peacekeeping. The USA, with its superpower status, pursues strategic interests more assertively. These approaches sometimes clash, as seen in Canada's refusal to join the Iraq War in 2003. Climate policy and energy disputes. Canada's carbon pricing and environmental regulations have conflicted with U.S. energy priorities. Pipeline projects like Keystone XL became flashpoints, with Canada advocating for economic development and the USA raising environmental concerns, or vice versa, depending on the administration. Social values and national identity. Multiculturalism versus melting pot. Canada embraces multiculturalism, celebrating diversity through immigration, cultural festivals, and inclusive policies. The USA traditionally promotes assimilation, the melting pot ideal. These models influence social cohesion, minority rights, and national narratives. Education, healthcare, and social safety nets. Canada's publicly funded healthcare and education systems reflect a commitment to equity. The USA's privatized models offer innovation but also inequality. These differences affect cross-border migration, policy debates, and citizen satisfaction. Public trust and civic engagement. Canadians generally express higher trust in government institutions, while Americans often view government with skepticism. This shapes political discourse, media coverage, and responses to crises, from pandemics to economic downturns. Modern flashpoints and future outlook. Digital services tax and tech tensions. Canada's proposal to tax U.S. tech giants like Google and Facebook sparked trade threats. The USA argued it unfairly targeted American firms, while Canada defended its right to regulate digital markets. This issue reflects broader debates over sovereignty in the digital age. Border security and immigration. Post-9/11 policies tightened border controls, affecting trade and travel. Recent migration surges and asylum claims have tested cooperation. While both nations value security, they differ in approach. Canada emphasizes humanitarian response. The USA prioritizes enforcement. Annexation threats and nationalism. In recent years, political rhetoric, such as threats of annexation or punitive tariffs, has fueled Canadian nationalism. While often symbolic, these statements challenge the foundation of mutual respect and require careful diplomatic navigation. In conclusion, a relationship of resilience. The Canada-USA relationship is not defined by harmony alone. It is shaped by conflict, compromise, and constant negotiation. Despite differences in history, governance, and values, both nations have built a partnership rooted in shared interests and mutual respect. As global challenges intensify, from climate change to digital disruption, Canada and the USA must continue to evolve together, balancing sovereignty with solidarity. Their story is not one of perfect friendship, but of enduring coexistence, a model for bilateral relations in an increasingly interconnected world.